Welcome back, everybody, to the Success Partner Podcast. I am your host, Daya Naef. And today we have Emily Sexton in the studio. Very excited to have her here. She's also an artist and an arts advocate. And so we have art and law in common together. Very active in entertainment in the DC art scene. And of course, just wanted to spend more time with Emily. So I'm delighted to bring her to you today. So tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are and who you serve.
Hi, thanks, Daya. It's great to be here. So I have a boutique law firm in DC where I represent a mix of nonprofit and for-profit clients, typically smaller players in the local art scene who, maybe have never had inside counsel, maybe have not really talked to a lawyer who actually kind of knows their business and how artists and creatives think. And so that's what I try to bring to my practice, is that that sensibility of being a writer and a performer myself. And also I was at the Kennedy Center for 15 years, so I really know from the inside perspective, how an arts organization operates, and also how larger organizations kind of bring on new players. And, it's those new players who are really the people who I'm often representing.
Yeah, and organizations, they can be a real support, or sometimes they can be a closed door.
Right. Exactly. And that's kind of how I got the inspiration for the focus of my firm. Is during my time at the Kennedy Center, one of my colleagues and I would joke that if we ever decided to leave the Kennedy Center and start our own practice, that we wanted to try to represent the arts organizations that we were often working with as lawyers at the Kennedy Center, who, again, were sort of in that space of not having their own in-house counsel. And, we got a lot of well, we can't change this because we got to take it outside to the lawyer. And it's we want to, trying to be that lawyer who can really kind of help and do this work in, a quick, cost efficient, kind of sensitive manner is who I want to be for my clients.
I love that. Now, did you always want to be both an artist and a lawyer, or was everyone leading the pack?
Going all the way back to college, I was actually majoring in creative writing and film studies, and hit a point where I was like, oh, great, I have to be doing something in 6 months. I was like, graduating, and I think it was this moment of, because I graduated a semester early, and I kind of made that decision to do that. I'd shifted some of my classes around to be able to do that, and looked at my summer courses, and I was in my apartment in February, realizing that a year from now I had to be doing something that wasn't being in an on-campus apartment going to school. And so that was kind of the panic law school application.
Okay.
I was like, well, I'm going to start studying for the LSAT and kind of see what happens. Because there weren't a whole lot of options given, it was well, I could move to Chicago and try to get or New York and try to get a job in publishing, or, try to make it in, as a writer, but you got to do something else until you get that novel written. You got to pay the bills. And so just kind of trying to figure all of that out. I was like, and I'd always it was funny because when I told people I was going to law school, people who knew me before college were like, well, duh. And people who only knew me in college were like, what, you're going to law school?
What?
What? So yeah, and that was, it ended up being, I definitely have had mixed feelings about it, but, have been able to build a career that I really, really enjoy. And I really enjoy my practice and my clients. And, it's nice to be able to say that. And certainly my time at the Kennedy Center was amazing. So,
yeah. Share a success story for one of your current clients, or indicative of what a current client would look like for you.
Yeah, excellent. So, one of the things that I have been doing is working with, I say that I'm legal services to the creative economy. And what that means is typically, it's nonprofit organizations, but it's also the individuals and the for-profits that work with them. And so, I've been working with actually some of my former Kennedy Center colleagues who are trying to put, basically trying to stay in the business, that they have left the Kennedy Center for whatever reason and are starting their own businesses to be able to continue to present the art and the artists that give them, that they feel passionate about. And so being able to be part of that and help them is really fabulous. Um, I'm working with another client who is, focusing on, they've spent the last, you know, couple of years really trying to find the right partner with whom to merge so that they can really cement the longevity of their nonprofit and their mission. And they've finally gotten to the point where we think we have the right fit, and so we're moving forward in working on that agreement now, which is really exciting. I'm really excited for them and for what that means for them and their, in the future of their really, really amazing mission and programming. I
Oh,
can't
that's
really share
amazing.
anymore because none of it is public,
Okay.
but
Right. Exactly. Yeah. But no, that's amazing. And sometimes we do need those partnerships. It's like being an artist can be a very lonely pursuit, and not having the full round table of talent built
mm-hmm.
out. Like somebody has to have more of the business, somebody has to do more of the marketing, somebody has to answer the age old question: am I making this for me, or am I making it to sell?
Right, right. Well, and I think
Yeah.
we're going to start to see a lot more of this in the nonprofit art space as people, there are a lot of players out there, and which is fabulous. And having that diversity and having, you know, theater programs that focus on kids or focus on people with disabilities or focus on, other, minority experiences or LGBTQ experiences. And having all of those players out there is wonderful. But I think because the funding situation is getting so difficult and, on a lot of different levels, I mean, there's the federal funding piece, but I also, we're seeing a lot of tightening in corporate giving
Mm-hmm.
and, in foundational giving. And so I think there's going to be more and more nonprofits that start to look to, okay, who can we partner with? Like, how do we achieve sustainability? And it's probably not going to be our 5-person nonprofit anymore. Like, we're going to have to find a bigger player. And I mean, this is something that, certainly, in my time at the Kennedy Center, we were very good at doing. We would, bring in nonprofits that were struggling and give them life. Um, and I think we're going to start to see more and more of that across the sector as, larger nonprofits look to diversify
Mm-hmm.
because they want to have more, you know, broaden their audiences and bring in, a broader range of, funding prospects, and also, just find ways to expand their footprint. And these smaller nonprofits that are just not going to be, it's not going to be a sustainable model to, keep smaller organizations, which is too bad, I think, because
Yeah.
that also means that, you know, the problem with a merger is not everybody stays. And so, there's going to be, unfortunately, that's, I think, going to really start to affect employment in the nonprofit sector as well. But
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of things are shifting around right now. Like,
yeah.
what's like one key piece of advice?
Ooh, for who? For clients, for lawyers, for
Yes. Yes, that.
all of the above. I mean, I really think, I mean, my advice for anyone looking at law school is always to go to the best law school you can get into. That is, which is, can be hard, if you get like a better fund, well, that you can get into and that you can afford.
And they can
It's
afford.
always that
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
But, all things being equal, like if you can get into a top tier school, like you should go, because it really, especially that first 10 years out, really matters. And even more broadly, like I still find, because I went to Harvard, and I mean, that network is still there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's not as big of an effect 25 years out, obviously, but, it really does. The people that you meet in law school, those connections that you make are connections that you're going to have for the rest of your career. Um, but just in general, I mean, I think people need to find their passions, and it may not be at work. It may be, I mean, I've sort of become infamous in the Provisors Network as the person with 5 novels in progress that I'm writing, like not that I'm reading, that I'm writing. I'm probably never going to finish any of them. It's just like, oh, I have this idea, and I'm going to sit down and write a
There
few
you go.
hundred words, and then I'll get another idea later. Which is why I cannot actually make a career as a writer and had to go to law school. Because I'm kind of a magpie. But I still make time to sit down and write. And I pull out my guitar and I play and I sing and I learn new songs and I write new things. And even if I never perform live ever again in my life, it's still something that brings me joy in those moments where, it's like, damn it, like that client didn't come through, or, we didn't get that, they didn't get that grant. And so we're not going to move forward with whatever, or, you know, my kid got a horrible grade on something. It's like, whatever it is, it's like,
Yeah,
you gotta find those things that give your life joy and meaning, whether in or outside of your career. And I've been super, super fortunate that I've been able to make some of that, how I make my living, as well as, how I spend my free time.
that's great. That was definitely one of the questions I was going to ask you. It's like, what are you still doing in the creative space? So yeah, that's wonderful. So yeah, you'll definitely have to give us a little performance, either a poetry reading or a
There we
strumming
go.
of the
There
guitar.
we
I
go.
love that. You must. So well, good. Let me think about what else would you like for us to know about you that we don't know yet?
Oh goodness, I don't know. um, I think really one of the things that I wish I could get every small organization to understand, whether for profit or nonprofit, is you don't just bring in a lawyer when you have a problem. That we can be so much more than just the fixers. And I think a lot of people don't think about it until, oh goodness, we're like having trouble getting this person to agree to our contract. Like, what do we do? Or, we have, some big project that we want to do that we feel like we need extra help with. And I mean, that's a great time to bring in a lawyer.
Mhm.
But there's also ways that we can be helpful and smooth things out along the way. One thing that I, especially this time of year, like really harp on with people is it's like, have you looked at your funding agreements recently? Like, we're going into giving season. Like, we've got, the National Day of Giving coming up. We've got all of these opportunities. Like, I think I looked up the numbers last year, and it's something like 40% of corporate and institutional giving happens in the last 2 months of the year.
Mhm.
And I may have that exact number wrong, but it's a like
Sounds right.
a majority of
Right. Makes sense.
of giving, an outsized amount happens in this next 2 months. And if you're not ready, like there are foundations that maybe like, what, we want to give away $100,000 before the end of
Mhm.
the year. And if you don't have your ducks in a row to be able to accept that kind of gift,
Mhm.
then it's going to pass you by, because there are 10 other organizations out there that want that money.
Yeah.
And having those ducks in a row, having your counsel, finding your counsel, and having them look at this, working with a lawyer who actually understands the business to really like make sure that you are ready for anything that comes down the pike is so important. And
Yes. Make it easy for them to give you
yeah,
their
exactly. Make it easy for
money.
people to give you money. It is. And so, but that's true of anything. I mean, just like being ready to jump on those opportunities is so important. And those are the kind of moments where you really need to have someone who both knows your business, but also knows their business
Mm.
to look at something and make sure that you're not agreeing to things that you don't want to agree to. I mean, funding agreements are often not super negotiable, but they can be a little negotiable.
Yeah.
And just trying to like cover those bases. I was actually I did a webinar a few weeks ago with some colleagues, and one of the things that came up was how can nonprofit boards protect themselves? that
Mm-hmm.
like the signatory to these agreements, especially in the like we were talking specifically in the DEI context. So it's like, what do you do if you're, if you really want to stay in your, mission driven kind of DEI adjacent swim lane, in situations where, people are now starting to face individual liability for, doing things that the government doesn't like. And, really simple language that you might be able to sneak into some of the, not sneak, you can ask for in some of these agreements are things like, that this agreement binds the organization, but not, the board, the officers, the individual employees. And that's not standard in a lot of these agreements, but there's no reason why it can't be. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and so just like little things like that, that if you don't have a lawyer who knows what they're doing, look at this kind of thing, you may not be building enough, you may not be building that kind of protection in for you. So
That makes a lot of sense. I would love to go back and watch that webinar if it's still if
yeah,
it's
no,
somewhere in
absolutely. I
perpetuity.
can share the
Okay,
link for you.
great. And how do people get in touch with you?
So you can reach me at Emily at sextonartslaw.com, or you can reach out on LinkedIn. I am, Emily Sexton, Sexton Law PLLC. We have pages for both. I'm actually LinkedIn is basically where I'm active outside of, the email, basically. If you go to sextonartslaw.com, we have a contact form there if that's easier. But yeah, I would love to hear from folks.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Emily, for being on the show today.
Thank you, Daya,
Uh,
for having me.
Thank you, everybody who's listening. This has been another episode of the Success Partner Podcast. Please like, subscribe, and stay tuned.